Hello there, and we're here, and I can't talk at the moment. Ralph just did something that shocked me, but anyway,
Said something sensible.
welcome to this edition of the podcast. You will notice, those of you who are watching this, that in fact I am in the office as opposed to my home, surrounded by my kids and drying laundry, which you can't see out of shot. But anyway, today I am actually in the office, which is brilliant, and this is all down to an improved signal, which is amazing, and this has been the bane of my life probably for the last year. So anyway, so there we
Yes,
go.
we're doing this on Signal. Did you say that?
Yeah, so, something like yeah. Anyway,
Okay, moving on,
right.
moving on, moving
Okay.
on.
Right. So today we are going to talk about not tariffs. There you go. We're going to be talking about, well, they get probably a little bit of that, but not as much as have recently. So first of all, we're going to talk about cattle, and that's not groups of cows or anything. We're talking about the Chinese electric vehicle battery company, the biggest one in the world, which has made an amazing sort of discovery or development, whatever you want to call it. And then we are both going to consider what's going to happen to Tesla in the next 5 years, because things are pretty bad there at the moment. So you've got in America, Trump isn't hugely keen on pushing the electric vehicle agenda, despite him offering very kindly to buy a Tesla from Musk, and Europe sales are going through the floor, and then in China it's being overtaken by quite literally all the other local manufacturers, particularly BYD. So anyway, so we'll start off by talking about the battery thing. So I call it CATL. I don't know whether that's the official CATL. I know it's basically it's a very long name for a company, so I'm going to call it CATL. So CATL basically made it said that it has got a battery that can in 5 minutes it can charge something like 571 kilometers, I think it is, which is phenomenal. I have said, and this follows on from last month when BYD said, or very recently when BYD said they could do a charge for something like, it was like 470 or something. It was another very long distance. So anyway, the thing is that this this one is a longer distance. So I have been saying all along, I mean, I've said this so many times over the last year or 2 years, that I think that investing in charging stations and charging networks, I think is ultimately going to be have a limited time span, because I have been saying for a long time now that really what everyone needs to be concentrating on is the improvement in battery technology, because if everyone has it can charge a battery in about 5 minutes, which is how long it takes to fill your car with petrol now, then there's going to be no need for expensive charging networks. There's going to be no need for extra sort of street side charging or anything like that, because all you need to do is you need to convert the existing garages and service stations and have more charging stations there, and you'll be fine. So it looks like that day is coming a lot sooner than, I have to say, than I expected. And I think that this is an absolutely amazing. I think this is a historic, monumental development. I'm amazed, to be honest. I'm amazed that not more has been made of this. I mean, I think it was I forgot what, I think it was Telegraph or something, but I remember thinking, why isn't anyone talking about this? But this is huge, and I think that this is going to change everything. I believe that this will mean once companies take this up and they buy those batteries, then I mean, maybe it'll take a while to build them at scale and all this kind of thing, but it's there. It's there, and I think if that is the case, range anxiety is ended. The fears about the costs and who's gonna make these charging networks, that's all gonna fall away, and there are going to be fewer barriers now to switching to electric vehicles. Another thing I've said for quite some time now is that I've said that any company that does charging networks, I said they need to find a sugar daddy in the form of like BP or Shell, which they have done. And I said the reason why they need to find that is because they've got more money than they've got a lot of money, and they can spend this. They can spend the money to develop the networks, but it doesn't really matter to them. Whereas if you've got an independent company that just makes it, like I said, I thought that they're going to have a limited shelf life. Whereas if you sell yourself to a sugar daddy, the sugar daddy can finance it all, and then by the time battery technology is taken up with it, everyone's lost interest, and it's okay. And at least as a charging company, selling yourself to a sugar daddy, you're going to make some money out of it, rather than watch your business literally fail within like 5 years or something. So anyway, so there you go. That's what. So I think this is really amazing development. What do you think, Ralph?
Yeah, I also think it's a fantastic development. I would think about EV as follows. So the battery is clearly one of the most important components of an electric vehicle for reasons that I do not have to expound, I believe. But there are at least three things to this battery, or to an EV, which stand out for me at least. One is, as you said, range anxiety, which is the justified concern that you might actually end up in a ditch somewhere. Well, actually, this is a metaphor. You wouldn't be unless you drive your BYD into a field, and why should you? No, but more to the point, and joking aside, clearly, if your battery runs out after 200 kilometers, then that's not good. And if it runs out at a time or at a place where there is no recharging facility, then obviously that limits very materially the day-to-day use of your vehicle. So the range that you get out of one battery charge is clearly important. The second one is indeed the charging time. If you get to a charging point in time, then you will not want to stay there for, let's say, half an hour. This is history. That doesn't happen anymore. But I think Teslas still take about 15 minutes for a full charge. And what BYD has now announced, which is less than 5 minutes, and CATL, I'm going to not use the acronym, which sounds like a horse or cow or something. So CATL is, I think, less than 5 minutes. That clearly is a technological step forward in not only the right direction, it's also a very material step forward. So range out of one battery, charging time for a full charge. And the third one, to me, stands out is a more of an engineering thing. As far as I understand, the batteries are sort of welded into the car in such a way that you cannot change the battery. So when or if the battery comes to the end of its useful life, it's not possible to just replace the battery. I must admit, I do not know where technology is with that at the moment, but just looking at the technological progress which we're making here, led and driven by, interestingly, China, not for the moment at least, Tesla in the United States or countries outside of China, is of such impressive magnitude that I wouldn't be surprised if at some point that last item, which stands out for me, which is the sort of fact that the battery is an integral part of the vehicle and cannot be changed easily, whether that will not also be improved. But let's go back to the two other things which have been improved. And to your point, this is in fact very interesting. I mean, if you compare electric vehicles for the moment with how we operate our petrol or diesel-driven combustion engines, clearly there is no range anxiety. It doesn't exist. And it doesn't exist not because we don't get a remarkable range out of one tank. It doesn't exist because there are refilling stations everywhere, basically. So it is the existing infrastructure which I think I would argue limits our range anxiety. Just one example from my own life, I sometimes go back to Germany and visit my parents there, and that's an 800-kilometer journey. Now, obviously, I'm not going to get this out of one tank, out of one fill, but I think it's got about, I've easily got like 400-kilometer range, but the way I drive probably makes it more like 300-kilometer. I don't know where my petrol goes, it just vanishes. Must have something to do with the fact that I like to drive fast in Germany, at least, where it's legal. Yeah. If the police is listening. Moving on. So there's no range anxiety simply because I know that the motorways are lined with petrol stations and there's never going to be any issue with that. Now, when I'm at the petrol station, refill takes like 5 minutes, exactly as you say. So that's also not going to be an issue. And it is these facilities of the operating part of motor vehicles which have to be replicated in electric vehicles. And increasingly they now are. Because clearly, first of all, let's focus on range. As you said, I think BYD's range is 500 kilometer or thereabouts. CATL's range is something like that, even more. And Tesla's range, I think, is a bit less. It's 350 kilometers or something like that. Now, clearly, I live in London, and I have recently discovered that there are territories apparently outside of London, which I didn't know. If you live in London, then I just looked this up. London's diameter is sort of like a circle a bit, isn't it? I mean, London's diameter is 36 kilometer.
Yeah.
So clearly, you can go wherever you ever would want to go.
I can certainly prove, I am living proof that there are places outside London, just to let you know. Yeah.
Are you? Why? Yeah. Do you not live in London? How is this possible?
No, I know. It's amazing, isn't it? We have electricity, running water, people still speak English. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah.
Let's do a special on that. I don't believe that can be true.
Yeah,
Anyway, I've been to your house. It does exist. I know this.
Yes, that's true. You have. A long time ago.
Joking aside, guys. Go back to my other example, which is actually a reasonable example. 800 kilometers to Germany, that is the longest journey I would do on a recurrent basis. If I can get that basically out of 2 charging events, that would be better even than that for a petrol car. So where are these charging points going to be? Your point is, I think, extremely valid here. One thing is, of course, they will use existing locations of existing distribution, which is petrol garages, and they will just have charging points there. The speed of the charge is now important, because if that took 15 minutes, then clearly you would have to have more charging points to service the demand that you would get. But if it's only 5 minutes, then this is exactly the same as we currently experience when we fill up at the petrol station in a conventional combustion engine car. So you go there, 5 minutes, you drive off. Sometimes there might be a queue there, a little bit of congestion, but not material. It's not ever really a problem. And so that, I think, means that the electric vehicle technology or the usability of these vehicles has now stepped up or is stepping up in a material way. I would just like to mention one other thing, and this goes back to London or other urban areas where the journeys that you might take are not that long. So you don't need 500 kilometer range, obviously, when you're driving around in Birmingham, London, or Paris, or wherever it might be. So there, you would just basically have the normal operation of the vehicle, which you're used to your motor vehicle. But now, when you come back home, this is where I think it is still interesting to build out the infrastructure. Because if you're home and you had your private charging point there, then your car would charge within 5 minutes and it's not going to be a problem. Then it could also charge overnight. But then if you think about sort of more urban areas where you have residential areas, perhaps you live in a building which has got 100 flats or something, and it has a car park area, or underground car park, or outside parking. And if the infrastructure there was charging points, then that would clearly be, I think, where the future is going to go. If the charging now only takes 5 minutes, then you don't need as many charging points. Same points are made earlier for the garages. And that is, I think, the reason why the rollout and support, and therefore the support of the operating of these vehicles, is going to become a lot more realistic. Because now perhaps you need one charging point for a normal sort of cul-de-sac where you have like 10 houses or 20 houses or whatever. Just drive to the charging point, which is outside the communal charging point. 5 minutes, Bob's your uncle, easy. And so, so I think this is a huge step forward, which makes this technology usable and a lot more feasible in future.
Yeah, and actually, while you were talking about that, I had another idea that maybe, so there could potentially, I think that there could potentially be big opportunities for garages, because you plug your car in. Now, at the moment, if you're in a conventional car and you're filling up, you have to stand there. You have to stand there and you have to pull you have to squeeze the thing, right? So you can't go anywhere. So you'll stand there and you're looking at the thing going up, and you play that game where you try to get it to the certain numbers. I mean, I always do that. Do you do that? I don't know.
No,
you always do that thing, and you're like, "Oh, can I get it to like 50 quid? Oh, exactly."
No, we used to do this when we had cash.
Yeah.
I used to always do that.
No,
but
I still do it.
Oh,
I still do it. It's like, can I just, Anyway, so I mean, I
You're such a playful guy. Excellent.
I need to get out more, but but the thing is, you're standing there, you can't walk away. But with this, like with charging, you can just plug the thing in and do something. And I think that there's a lot of, I think you could, for instance, I presume, you could have bigger screens, like actual LED screens, or screens on there that could maybe use AI to give you ideas about like things that you might want to buy. And because you've got two hands now, you're not standing. You could get your phone out and you could pay for it or whatever, and it comes out. Or I mean, I do think that there could be some very interesting there could be some very interesting earning opportunities as a result of this.
Let's remember, it only takes 5 minutes now. That's the advantage. So yes, you have your hands free, but you don't have that much time to do anything useful with it. And by the way, what's an interesting one? When you're from the continent, which is of course where I was born, that thing with holding the pistol down, that doesn't exist.
Oh, really?
When I came to this country, I still remember this. I mean, it's like 40 years ago now or something. I was trying to fill up my car and it wouldn't work because on the continent, in Germany certainly, but also on the motorways in France and Belgium and everywhere, there's this little sort of metal pin which you can slide, and then it arrests the pistol under, so it doesn't drop down.
Right.
And so you just basically arrest it, and then you can do whatever you want. When I came to this country, I thought, this is all broken. I mean, the petrol stations don't work. So anyway, but in England, you're right. Nevertheless, it's only 5 minutes. I'm sure they can start selling you stuff.
I wonder. I mean, even if that, I mean, this is pure speculation, obviously, but even if battery technology really, really advances, I would imagine that they will limit it in terms of it will have to be at least 5 minutes. So the fastest it can be is 5 minutes, but it could be for a longer charge. So that just means you've got 5 minutes in which you've got the audience captive, and then you can sell. Well, no, I think that if you do that, I bet you can sell stuff. I mean, especially if you used, let's say, I mean, I don't know, complete speculation, but what about if all the security cameras and things could pick up where so they're not following you, they're following the car, right? And they could say, like, you have been to Oxford all day and you are heading, and it can work out that you are heading home. So it might come up on the screen using AI, do you need milk for going home, or do you need this, or, depending on the time of day. And you could, I mean, I would, surely people would be quite up for suggestions like that. It's only 5 minutes. They're standing around. I mean, I don't know. I think that there are potential opportunities there, and obviously for there will have to be retooling as well, new big screens and all that kind of stuff. But yeah,
yeah.
I like making stuff up like that.
No, I'm sure people would like to sell you more stuff, but
Yeah.
I wonder how much you can do. I mean, there was an idea in supermarkets, I think, as well at some point to to do that, and there is always a trade-off between how much the customer feels aided by these messages and how much they feel, well, sort of hustled into buying something. When I'm on the Ocado website and you have your shopping list logged there and you do this, and before the checkout they always go, would you like to have this and that and this sausage and an umbrella or something, and you think no, and you just click through, and I find this all very annoying. So there's a trade-off, but yes, definitely possible.
Sausages and umbrellas.
Yeah.
Good. So anyway, there's so many things I could say, but I won't. But anyway, okay, fair enough. So let's move on then. So I think that's a really amazing story, something we're going to hear more of. I mean, either everyone else is going to have to up their game and make the distances longer, or they're just going to give up and buy in those batteries from CATL or BYD, whatever.
Just a parting comment. I also think that the next step would surely have to be to make these batteries exchangeable. As you run to the end of your life, if you can exchange the battery into your existing vehicle, I think that might be another step up for the usability of these vehicles.
I agree. I mean, again, this is something I've been saying for the last few years, that NIO in particular, is known for their battery swapping. So basically, you go into, like, it's the size of about a shipping container. You go in, they jack your car up, and then they remove the battery and slap another one in, put it down, and you're out. That also takes 5 minutes.
Cool.
Now, that sounds
really.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
and I think that's, I've always said that is amazing. Musk has always been very dismissive of that, but I put that down to the fact that he spent billions on developing his own battery technology. So if you spent billions and billions developing your own technology, you're not going to go, oh, actually, do you know what? Hydrogen fuel cells are brilliant. And, oh, yeah, the swappable batteries are great. You're not going to do that. You're going to go, no, they're absolutely terrible. Ours are the best. But then that brings us on to the next item.
Oh, you're such a smooth operator. It's amazing.
I know. It's a gift.
Yes.
It's a gift.
It is a gift.
Yeah,
and
it's
it wasn't planned. It wasn't actually not planned. This is not planned.
That's true. There we go.
I'm so impressed.
Thank you very much. So that brings us on very nicely to Tesla itself. Now, there are talks. So it sounds like Musk himself has said that he's going to de-emphasize his White House work, and he's going to put more effort into Tesla. Now, my theory. So if we're looking at what's going to happen to Tesla in the next 5 years, I personally think that Musk should sell down. I don't think he will sell out of, but he should sell down his interest in Tesla to a company like, let's say, VW. That's just for the sake of argument. So he's still got a stake in it, so he can still benefit from it, but he then just doesn't need to get involved in it. So, because I think that side of things is going to get commoditized. However, I think that, and I also think that he should emphasize, he should put more effort into XAI and SpaceX and XAI. I think in this order: SpaceX most, XAI next, and then X last. I think that's how I think he should be concentrating his time. I think that that Tesla itself, the models are old. Even the new models is a rehash, sort of like an upgrade of the Model Y, for instance. Even him coming back semi full-time, well, it's not semi-full-time, but him coming back and concentrating more on it, you can't suddenly magic up a car in a year or two. I think he needs to leave that. The competition is getting better. He's not there, Tesla's not where it once was, and I think he needs to put that aside and concentrate on the other stuff, because I think that Starlink in particular has a lot more potential upside to it. And then you've got obviously XAI, a lot of upside to it, and X he needs for basically propaganda stroke marketing purposes. So yeah. What do you think about that?
Sorry. Propaganda. Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. I think he should buy the rights for the use of the letter X.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, he owns the letter X TM.
Yes,
So that'll be very confusing, actually, wouldn't
that'd
it?
be awesome.
So, yeah.
I don't know about this. I think that Tesla is a treasure trove and a remarkable company to be developed into the new world. And arguably, he has, perhaps one can say, created the acceptance in the United States for a market of electric vehicles. Now, what recently happened when he turned doolally, if that is a technical term, no, but joking aside, when he became more politically active and more controversial in his statements about politics and social dynamics, there was a clear backlash here. So when I wouldn't think that selling out of Tesla is the right move. I would think that he should develop this company further. But before he does that, I think he needs to, and this is to your point, of course, which you made several episodes ago, I think he needs to repair the reputational loss which Tesla suffered because of his recent change in, let's say, messaging. Let's say that in general. Look, I mean, you know this from me. I do think the guy is an amazing guy, and I think there is absolutely no reason to not say that. But what I have also always said is the obvious, just pointing and highlighting or acknowledging the fact that he is an erratic person. He's always been erratic. Do you remember that when, this is long ago, when he basically invested billions of the Tesla balance sheet in Bitcoin, and then I think literally 3 weeks later he sold it all again, not all, but 50% of it, and he said, well, Bitcoin mining uses up a lot of electricity and it's against our values. We could have known this before you actually sunk half the Tesla balance sheet in this. My point is, he is known, he has a track record for, let's say, short-term volatility in his decisions. But this volatility is on top of a remarkably steady, well thought out long-term strategy. And we know, I mean, I would, by the way, recommend everybody who's interested in Musk read Walter Isaacson biography. It's absolutely marvelous. And apparently Musk has got various strings to his bow. One is sort of colonization of Mars. I mean, let's not aim low here. I mean, this is one thing which he wants to do. And the second big theme is, in fact, electric vehicles. So I think it is close, and it's core to his philosophy of doing this. And I believe he is probably going to be interested in furthering these efforts. What he has, I believe, to realize, and perhaps has realized, I don't know this yet, is that his recent more erratic social messaging, let's call it that, has generated a loss of reputation in his key brand, which is Tesla, which is also the key to his personal wealth, by the way.
Well, no, actually, no. Now it's Starlink. It was Tesla, but now
is it?
Now Starlink is now more. Yeah, it's quite amazing.
Is Starlink a quoted company? I didn't know that.
Not Starlink. SpaceX.
But that's not quoted, is it? SpaceX is private. So somebody has to come along and invent a value.
Yeah, I forgot, but I remember thinking, actually, this is quite amazing that there's a switch going on. But anyway,
if I talk about these things in sequence, so first I would like to just talk about the reputational loss, and then also perhaps about the future of Tesla. And I'm going to do this in a little bit of an equity analysis mode. I've sort of prepared a few thoughts on this, and I've looked at the numbers. Because the numbers...
we like to hear. That's what we like to hear.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, reputational loss. First thing, before I look at the numbers, a softer thing. I think we all know the type of customer who buys Tesla. They are perhaps more intellectual minded. They are progressive liberals. Some of them come from a leftist point of view, from a leftist. Left doesn't have to mean socialist, by the way. In America, it would be a voter of the Democrats rather than a voter of the Republican Party would buy Teslas. And therefore, I think ownership of a Tesla signals stuff. And yes, there is a little bit of virtue signaling here as well going on. I own a Tesla, I therefore care for the environment. And that's the virtue signaling part. Also, I think people genuinely do care for the environment who own a Tesla. And the third thing is technological age. This is a technological edgy company. It's not just an electric vehicle company, it's also autonomous driving. I mean, this is cool. So we have this kind of customer who genuinely is, and also probably likes to portray himself within his social nexus as a forward-thinking, progressive liberal, technologically enlightened and literate individual. And then Musk comes along and supports far-right political parties outside of the United States, like the AfD in Germany, like his name eludes me, Reform UK.
Yeah, Farage.
Farage, who is not as far right as the AfD, but certainly is on the right of the political spectrum. And so that is where you get brand erosion, because that's an issue. And I believe that is one of the major reasons that sales of Tesla have recently cratered. And so that is a reputational loss. If he understands it, to the extent that he will understand it, he needs to step back from this, as you said. He's already sort of doing it. He's already now distancing himself from Washington, from his involvement with Doge. And if he does that further, one hopes perhaps also, if he has an insight, that political messaging is not what his core the reason for being is, but being an entrepreneur is. If that goes back, then I think there's going to be a reversal of this reputational loss, and Tesla's numbers will be recovering. Now, to the extent that Tesla is an astonishing company which has been trading on expectations of technological progress, I'd like to look at some numbers. Now, here come the numbers.
Okay.
Now, this is an absolutely remarkable company. Let us just say first that we're looking at price-earnings ratios. A little of technical jargon coming up. Price-earnings ratios, just as a reminder, a PE ratio is exactly what it says on the tin. It takes the share price and divides it by the earnings of the company generated in the particular year where the PE ratio is calculated. So, for example, in 2020. In other words, it is a measure, a metric, which tells you how many years of earnings an investor is willing to pay for now in order to take ownership of the share of the company. And if you look at this metric, the PE ratio for the likes of Porsche, VW, Mercedes, Ford, the numbers are in single-digit range. This is like 5 times, 7 times. Look at Tesla for 2020. The PE ratio for Tesla in 2020, and this is not a joke, is 1,120. You do not have to be a financial mathematician to understand that this number is bigger than 5. So a normal car maker has PE ratios in the region of single digit, maybe 5, maybe 7, maybe 8, maybe 10. Who knows? This is now double digit. But it's not going to be 1,120. So what does that mean? An investor in 2020, in the year 2020, numbers are similar here, was willing to pay 1,120 years of earnings generated in that year as a price for the share. And of course, we can break this down a little bit more, because this, of course, means that either you say it's the next millennia of earnings, basically, you pay up now, or you can say it is a particular growth rate of earnings now which you price in. That's a different way of looking at it. And here, guys, I'm a financial mathematician, and the financial mathematicians are always very theoretical here. They go on about this is a perpetuity and forever, and this is correct. Technically, this is correct. But let's be pragmatic about this. How far into the future can we project earnings? I actually give you the answer. There's probably 3 years or 5 at most. But let us be racy here, and let's say for the next 20 years. So we truncated this at 20 years. We're not looking into infinity. We're just saying, what would a PE ratio of 1,000 times equate to in terms of assumed and expected earnings growth over a forecastable time horizon, which I'm going to pick now as 20 years. That's still quite a long time, but let's use 20 years. What comes out is, if I assume 5% base rates, meaning the rate at which I discount this, it comes out as 40%. 40% earnings growth every year for 20 years without fail. 40%, 40%, 30%, no, that's not enough. 40% every year without fail. And so what has then happened? Because we can, of course, compare that with the earnings growth that company has actually delivered. And I've done this by quarter. So I'm going to read out to you just some of the actual earnings growth that Tesla has delivered on a quarter-to-quarter basis. Right after this number was calculated in 2020, for the first quarter 21, it was 57%. Remember, the benchmark here is we're assuming 40%. Delivered 57. Next quarter, 94. Next quarter, 61. 60, 50. These are massive numbers. So you can see why perhaps these type of gargantuan, euphoric PEs come about. But this is only because investors are somehow happy to believe that these actual earnings growth numbers, which were delivered in some quarters, could be going on for the next 20 years. That, it turns out, is a tall order, even for Tesla. If we continue this, then in 2Q22, it was 13%, then 17, then 12. Still something VW would die for, but not as high as what we need, 40%, not as high as the recent history up to that point. How do we continue? Minus 6%. Ooh, that's not good. That's a minus. We don't like negative numbers. This is a contraction. Then we have 4%. Then we have minus 12%, another contraction. Then we get minus 7, minus 9, 2, minus 45. A contraction by 45%. That's in 4Q24. That just happened. 1Q25 recent earning calls, most freshest numbers we have, minus 14%. So I stop now and bore you with the numbers. But I want to give you the numbers as well, so that we have a little bit of concrete food for thought here. So in other words, the PE ratio, which, by the way, this is another thing which I need to share with you. We had just had minus 45% earnings collapse, followed by minus 14% earnings reduction. So what is the PE now? How much would you pay for a company that delivers your earnings contractions of this magnitude? Do you pay 1 times? I'm not sure. Would you pay 150 times? I don't think so. What is the PE of Tesla now? 148 times. So that is something which should really give us pause. This company is not trading on its actual earnings growth numbers that it delivers. When it delivers arguably peerless growth of high double digit, then we see PEs of 1,000 times. When it is cratering and we see single digit or negative growth, it doesn't exist, contractions, negative numbers, of meaningful, even very large orders of magnitude, it still trades on 150 times earnings. That can't be. A financial mathematician will tell you this is insane. But it does, and the markets are not insane. The markets, as we've just seen with the sell-off of the US bond market as a consequence of the tariffs, the markets are rational. Not always, not in the moment necessarily, but long-term they are rational. So what's happening? And I think there is evidence here that in the past, Tesla has traded on exaggerated and euphoric long-term earnings assumptions or expectations. And that's on the back of this idea that we have a technologically edgy, visionary CEO here who drives this growth. Of late, this reputation of Elon has taken a knock. People have been selling cars. The sales collapse, which I have just referenced, was driven by Europe. Also the US, but mostly Europe, where numbers have been minus 60, minus 70% in France and Germany. And yet, it is trading on 150 times. This 150 times can no longer discount a conviction that we have a visionary CEO. So something else must be happening. And this is what I think is the case. Tesla is not only trading on expectations of car sales. It is very materially also trading on expectations of ancillary technology that other car makers do not have. And these features are autonomous driving, which BYD, I think, also is looking at, but is not as far down the road as Tesla. And second, something that nobody else has, and that is the sale of robots. Remember, there are Tesla robots. when Elon, in the times that he was still a sane visionary, came on the sales conventions of Tesla, the annual conventions, there was a robot on stage. It was remarkably lifelike because there was an actor in a Tesla suit. But it was a metaphor. It was a metaphor for what is to come and what Elon is also investing money in. Indeed, on the most recent earnings call, which you wouldn't believe I listened to, he said, in a drawback to when I was an analyst, the future of the company, this is Tesla, is fundamentally based on large-scale autonomous cars, point one, and large-scale, large-volume, vast numbers of autonomous humanoid robots. Point two. And we know that he is a person who is able to translate vision into reality. Think of his company Permalink, which is now producing some of these implants already. And so I think that we would write Tesla off at our peril. I think there is still a lot there. Musk is going to revert back into his more normal visionary form over time, which will revert the reputational loss that we have witnessed. And at the same time, he's going to, that would be my expectation, continue delivering technologically visionary, truly transformational technologies, in a sense that other car makers like BYD or even CATL, which is not a car maker, or technology providers like CATL are not going to do. That is still, the markets are still telling us that investors are willing to literally buy into this particular vision. And so that is where I will stop. That's how the numbers sort of translate into the story which I would like to tell. I think we write it off at our peril. I think, yes, there is reputation loss, which is manifesting itself in a slump in sales. But I believe that Musk is already stepping back from his more social political messaging, which will probably in time, I'm thinking years, become more attenuated, softer, if it doesn't
Cuddly.
disappear completely. Say again?
Cuddly.
Yeah, well, I don't think he's ever been cuddly. And
That's a great word.
as
Cuddly.
that happens, we are going to see the Tesla is here to stay, and that is the reason why in the end I don't know, Peter, whether he should sell out. I don't think he will. I think it
But
is
then,
his
why don't you think
baby.
you could carve out the sort of boring, you carve out the production, and forget the battery, forget the battery thing. I mean, he's put a lot into it, so that is difficult. But he could hive off the boring car stuff, because I think one of the things that it has always, into my mind, Tesla has always lacked versus other cars is production facilities. I mean, yes, it's got gigafactories, but other companies, if you had, you could have access to different production centers, which it seems have better quality control, and also your distribution would be better. So I think that that's, to my mind, that's what it lacks. But yes, yes, you are quite right in terms of the technology that it has, the autonomous, that definitely has a future. And I think, and the robots, possibly, I'm not so sure. I mean, I don't know, but anyway, I do think that they have tech. So maybe if a deal is done, the carrot for doing the deal with, let's say, an established automotive manufacturer could say, hey, look, you can have access to this technology, but we're going to have access to your production facility, global footprint, etc. And if if then it's seen as to be more of the car itself rather than being seen as a basically MAGA-mobile, it's going to be seen as a car again. I think I think in a way
exactly.
that what he could
Exactly.
do by going with someone else like VW, I keep saying VW just for the sake of argument, but for going there, that could accelerate the magazation of the brand. That would help.
Absolutely.
Whilst
Absolutely.
at the same time, he still has that magic X factor that people would like to buy into.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it could help him. It could help accelerate the brand while still keeping all the good bits.
Yeah, I mean, you can, but absolutely, this is also this is what I also just presented in a different way. But you can also turn around what I just said. You can also say that Tesla is still trading massively on the expectations that they will continue to deliver, but from now on deliver visionary technologies that sell. Because 150 times, I mean, come on, that's a massive PE for a company which has just generated earnings contraction. And so, in other words, you would have to say that if it is indeed autonomous driving and Tesla robots, which are going to be, which are discounted here by the markets, well, then they better deliver something on that. Because if they don't, then these PEs are at risk of cratering.
Yeah.
And is it going to be easier to do that in future? Well, surely not, because the competition is not sleeping. BYD is a fantastic company which is also able to generate technological revolutionary steps forward, as we have just discussed with the battery charging time. CATL is also a China-based company, and of course we mustn't forget the perhaps short-term, we don't know yet, the environment for global trade has changed because of the tariffs. Tesla may be a US domiciled company, but the value chain, the supply chain is such that also Tesla uses, I don't know what the percentage is, a very high material percentage of parts which are not manufactured in the US. So they are going to be affected negatively by tariffs. We will have to see what the Trump administration is going to do in tariffs in the future. It is already crumbling and it's melting off, and we don't know what the future will bring there. But if tariffs are to stay in some shape or form in future, that's not going to ease the global marketplace, arguably for anybody, but certainly not for Tesla, with that particular dynamic of 40% of its parts being manufactured outside of the US.
Okay.
And BYD is not trading at 150 times multiple, so it is much less vulnerable to this environment, which is getting more and more difficult to navigate.
Okay then. Well, look, I think that's a good place to stop and ponder. But yeah, I mean, very interesting stuff this week. I think it's proved that we can get through an episode without talking too much about tariffs, which I think is a great achievement.
I did bring them in though, didn't I?
I know. Oh yeah. You can't not. I mean, you can't not.
We're not talking about inflation at the moment.
No, that's true.
Can we have another episode about inflation, please?
No, let's not do that. No.
Okay. Fine.
But anyway, all right. Well, look, on that note, I think let's call it a day. But thank you very much indeed, as always, for your gems. And we will be back again very soon. So
it's been a pleasure as always. Thanks for having me.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.